The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around the excavation site as Dr. Sarah Chung brushed away centuries of sediment from what looked like a door. She had been working on this dig for 3 months now, and every day brought something new. The ruins stretched for kilometers in every direction, silent monuments to a civilization that had vanished long before. Humans even discovered fire. Sarah wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked around at her team. There were 12 of them in total, representing 7 different species from across the galaxy. To her left, Belshara worked carefully with her 4 delicate hands, each movement precise and measured. The Takari woman stood nearly 2 meters tall, her chitinous body covered in patterns that shifted from deep blue to worried purple as she worked. Her large compound eyes caught every detail, missing nothing. "This seal is intact," Sarah called out, her voice carrying across the dig site. "After 12,000 years, it's still intact." The other researchers gathered around. Gorn, a massive Kralthian with rocky skin, lumbered over to examine Sarah's finding. His people were strong but slow, perfect for the heavy lifting that archaeological work sometimes required. Behind him came Pip and Pap, the twin Misery, who communicated in musical tones that their translators converted to speech. They were small, barely reaching Sarah's waist, but their analytical minds were sharper than anyone else on the team. "A sealed vault," Pip sang, his translator rendering it in standard Galactic. "This could be significant." "Or dangerous," Belshara added, her voice tight. The precursors did not seal things without reason. Sarah smiled at her colleague. Belshara had been nervous since they found the first hints of this vault 3 weeks ago. The Takari people had long memories, longer than most species, and they remembered things the galaxy had tried to forget. Stories of precursor weapons that had torn moons apart. Tales of entire star systems rendered lifeless by technology nobody understood. "We won't know until we open it," Sarah said, running her scanner over the door's surface. "The energy readings are stable. Whatever's inside has been dormant for millennia." "That does not mean it is safe," Belshara insisted. Her mandibles clicked together, a sign of agitation that Sarah had learned to recognize. "My people have protocols for precursor weapons. We should contact the Concordat before proceeding." Sarah understood Belshara's concern. The Galactic Concordat had strict laws about precursor artifacts, especially weapons. Any device capable of mass destruction was to be reported immediately and destroyed without study. It was a law born from fear, from too many close calls with technology that nobody fully understood. But Sarah was human, and humans had a different philosophy. Knowledge, no matter how dangerous, was better than ignorance. Throughout human history, they had taken risks that other species found insane. They had split the atom, edited their own genes, and built artificial intelligences that could think faster than biological minds. Each time, other species had warned them to stop. Each time, humans had smiled and pushed forward. "Let's just see what we're dealing with first," Sarah suggested. "Then we can make the call." The next 2 hours were spent carefully removing the seal. The door was not locked by any conventional means. Instead, it required solving a mathematical puzzle, aligning symbols in a sequence that took all 12 team members to decipher. When the final piece clicked into place, the door hummed with power for the first time in thousands of years. It opened slowly, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. The room was small, only about 5 meters across, and perfectly preserved. In the center, suspended in some kind of stasis field, floated an object that made everyone stop and stare. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The device looked like a sphere made of crystalline metal, about the size of a human head, with patterns of light flowing across its surface like water. Energy pulsed through it in rhythmic waves, and Sarah's scanner went wild with readings she had never seen before. "That's a resonance core," Belshara whispered. And Sarah heard actual fear in her voice. By all the stars, that's a resonance core. What does it do? Sarah asked, stepping closer to the chamber entrance. It manipulates gravitational fields, Velshara explained, her body now completely purple with distress. In theory, it could move moons, redirect asteroids, or tear apart planets if misused. My people have historical records of one being activated accidentally. It killed 3 billion Tekari in a matter of hours. The other team members backed away from the entrance. Even Gorn, who feared little, looked uncomfortable. Sarah alone remained where she was, her eyes fixed on the device with fascination rather than fear. How long ago was that? Sarah asked. 543 years ago, Velshara said immediately. The Tekari never forgot disasters. The wounded left on my homeworld is still visible from space. We call it the Scar of Presumption, a reminder of what happens when we reach for power we do not understand. Sarah pulled out her personal scanner and began taking detailed readings. The device was stable, its energy output contained and controlled. Whatever stasis field held, it had been designed to last forever, and it had done its job perfectly. Sarah, we need to report this, Velshara said, moving to stand beside the human. The Concordat must be informed immediately. This weapon needs to be destroyed. It's not a weapon, Sarah said softly, studying the data on her scanner. Or at least I don't think it was meant to be one. What do you mean? Look at the chamber, Sarah gestured around them. Look at how carefully it was preserved. If the precursors wanted to build a weapon, why seal it away like this? Why create such an elaborate security system? This wasn't hidden because it was dangerous. It was hidden because it was valuable. That is speculation, Velshara said, but Sarah could hear uncertainty in her voice. Maybe, Sarah admitted. But think about it. The precursors were the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known. They didn't just destroy themselves with their own weapons. They vanished. What if they were trying to build something amazing, and we've spent the last 10,000 years being too afraid to understand it? Sarah took a step toward the chamber, and Velshara moved to block her path. The Tekari woman's forearms spread wide, her body language screaming distress. Sarah, please. Do not do this. Call the Concordat. Let them handle it. But Sarah was already reaching for her communicator, not to call the Concordat, but to document what she was seeing. Her mind was racing with possibilities, with questions that needed answers. This was why she had become an archaeologist, why she had spent years studying dead civilizations. Not to catalog their mistakes, but to learn from their achievements. She looked up at Velshara, and their eyes met. In that moment, Sarah saw all the fear and trauma that the Tekari carried, the weight of history and loss that shaped every decision they made. But Sarah also saw something else, curiosity, buried deep beneath the caution. Velshara wanted to understand, too. She was just too afraid to admit it. Trust me, Sarah said quietly. We'll be careful. But we can't just destroy this. We need to know what it really is. Velshara's colors shifted from purple to a conflicted mix of blue and orange. Her mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of internal debate. Finally, she stepped aside, but her voice carried a warning. If this goes wrong, Sarah-chan, it will not just be your life at risk. It will be this entire planet. Perhaps this entire system. Sarah nodded, acknowledging the weight of that responsibility. Then she stepped into the chamber, her scanner held high, ready to unlock secrets that had been hidden for 12,000 years. Behind her, Velshara watched with every instinct, screaming at her to stop the human. But she did not. Perhaps that was the moment everything changed. Perhaps that was when caution first began to lose its grip on the galaxy's collective consciousness. The resonance core pulsed with light, as if awakening from a long sleep, and Sarah smiled. The moment Sarah's hand reached toward the stasis field, Velshara moved with a speed that surprised everyone. For a species known for their caution and careful deliberation, the Takari woman crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat. Her forearms wrapped around Sarah's shoulders and waist, pulling the human back from the resonance core with surprising strength. "Don't take it," Velshara said, her voice breaking. "Please." Sarah stumbled backward, caught off balance by the sudden intervention. She looked up at Velshara and saw something she had never seen before in her colleague's compound eyes. It was not just fear. It was the kind of deep, soul-cutting terror that came from witnessing something so horrible that it changed you forever. "Velshara," Sarah said gently, not struggling against the hold. "I was just going to scan it. I wasn't going to remove it from the stasis field." "You do not understand." Velshara's voice was barely above a whisper now. "You cannot understand. Your people are young. You have not yet learned what we learned. You think all knowledge is worth pursuing, all risks worth taking. But there are some things that should remain buried." The other team members watched in uncomfortable silence. This was more emotion than any of them had ever seen from Velshara. The Takari were logical, methodical, always in control. To see one of them break down like this was deeply disturbing. Sarah slowly raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "Tell me," she said. "Help me understand." Velshara's grip loosened slightly. Her colors shifted to a deep, sorrowful blue. After a long moment, she released Sarah and stepped back. Her four hands came together in front of her body, a Takari gesture of sharing painful memories. "I was young when it happened," Velshara began. "Only 23 years old, barely an adult by my people's standards. I was studying at the Crystalline Academy on my homeworld, in the southern continent. It was a beautiful place, Sarah. Towers of living crystal that sang in the wind. Gardens where we grew food and beauty in equal measure. 3 billion of my people called the southern continent home." Sarah remained still, sensing that Velshara needed to tell this story without interruption. "A mining expedition in the polar region found precursor ruins," Velshara continued. "They were excited. We all were. The precursors were legendary, and finding intact artifacts was rare. The mining team reported finding a sealed chamber, much like this one. Inside was a device, a resonance core." Velshara's whole body trembled as she spoke. The head of the expedition was a scientist named Kelmora. He was brilliant, ambitious, and like you, he believed that knowledge was always worth pursuing. He believed that the precursors had been misunderstood, that their technology was not inherently dangerous. He wanted to prove that we could master what they had built. "What happened?" Sarah asked softly. "He activated it," Velshara said. "He believed he understood the controls. He had spent weeks studying the device, running simulations, consulting with the best minds our people had. He was careful, Sarah. He was cautious. He did everything right according to all our protocols. And it still went wrong." The chamber felt colder somehow, as if the temperature had dropped with Velshara's words. "The device began to manipulate local gravity fields," Velshara continued. "Small changes at first, barely noticeable. But then it started to cascade. The gravitational constant in a 50-kilometer radius began to fluctuate. Objects began to fall upward. Water boiled in the oceans. The tectonic plates shifted. And then, the device reached critical mass. Velshara's colors had gone completely pale now, almost white with the memory of it. It created what we call a gravitational collapse event. A sphere of space where gravity increased by a factor of 10,000 in less than a second. Everything within 500 kilometers was crushed to the size of a small room. Cities, forests, mountains, and 3 billion of my people. All compressed into an area you could fit inside this chamber. Sarah felt her stomach turn. She had read about the Takari disaster in historical files, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. It made the numbers real, gave faces to the statistics. I survived because I was on the northern continent, Velshara said. I was studying advanced mathematics at the time. When I felt the tremor, when I saw the southern sky turn black as if reality itself was being torn apart, I knew something terrible had happened. But I did not know how terrible until later. Communications from the south simply stopped. When rescue teams finally reached the edge of the affected zone, they found a sphere of crushed matter 20 meters across. That was all that remained of 3 billion lives. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind outside seemed to have stopped. The device shut down after that, Velshara continued. It had exhausted its power, or perhaps it had accomplished whatever mad purpose it was designed for. Kelmora was inside the collapse zone. We never found enough of him to bury. All we found was his final transmission, recorded moments before the end. Do you know what he said? Sarah shook her head. He said he was sorry. He said he thought he understood, but he was wrong. He begged whoever found the recording to destroy all precursor devices, to never make the same mistake he made. Those were the last words of one of the brightest minds my people ever produced. An apology and a warning. Velshara turned to look directly at Sarah. That is why we have protocols. That is why the Concordat demands destruction of precursor weapons. Because even when we are careful, even when we think we understand, we do not. The precursors were so far beyond us that their tools might as well be magic. And magic, Sarah, is just another word for something that can kill you in ways you cannot predict or prevent. Sarah took a slow breath, processing everything she had heard. She understood now why Velshara had reacted so strongly. This was not abstract fear. This was trauma, deep and personal, carried for over 500 years. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and she meant it. I'm sorry for what happened to your people. I cannot imagine carrying that kind of loss. And yet, you still want to study the device, Velshara said. It was not a question. Sarah looked at the resonance core, still floating peacefully in its stasis field. The patterns of light continued their slow dance across its surface, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Yes, Sarah admitted, but not because I think your fear is wrong. Not because I dismiss what happened to your people. I want to study it because running from knowledge has never saved humanity from anything. Throughout our history, we have faced terrible weapons, catastrophic disasters, and technologies that could destroy us. Every time, we had a choice: hide from them or understand them. And understanding always led to more destruction, Velshara countered. Humans developed nuclear weapons. You created artificial plagues. You built machines that could think and decided to give them weapons. Your history is littered with examples of knowledge that should have remained hidden. You're right, Sarah agreed. We made terrible mistakes. We still make them. But we also learned from them. Nuclear weapons ended wars, but also gave us power generation. Disease research led to cures. Artificial intelligence gave us tools to solve problems we never could have solved alone. Yes, we touched fire and got burned. But we also learned to control fire, and that changed everything. This is not fire, Velshara said firmly. This is something we do not understand. Something the precursors themselves might not have fully understood. Which is exactly why we need to study it, Sarah pressed. Velshara, what happens when someone else finds a resonance core? What happens when a species less careful than yours, or less ethical than mine, decides to use it as a weapon? The Concordat can destroy every core it finds, but it cannot find them all. This galaxy is too big, and there are too many precursor ruins. Eventually, someone will activate one of these devices. Would you rather that happen in ignorance or with knowledge? Velshara's colors shifted again, moving through a spectrum of blues and purples. Sarah could see the internal conflict playing out across her colleague's body. "You are asking me to trust human judgment over Takari wisdom," Velshara said slowly. "No," Sarah replied. "I'm asking you to trust that courage and caution can work together. You know the dangers. I understand the possibilities. Together, maybe we can find a way to study this safely." Before Velshara could respond, Gorn's deep voice rumbled across the chamber. "Alert! 3 Concordat security vessels entering orbit. They are hailing us." Sarah and Velshara turned to look at the massive Kralthian. His rocky face was impossible to read, but his tone carried urgency. "How did they know?" Sarah asked. "Automated protocols," Pip and Pap sang together. "When we opened a sealed precursor vault, our equipment sent a notification to the Archaeological Survey Network. The Concordat monitors all such notifications." Sarah looked back at the resonance core. Time had just run out. Within hours, maybe minutes, Concordat security forces would arrive at the dig site with orders to destroy the device. All the questions it could answer, all the knowledge it represented, would be gone forever. She made a decision. "I'm taking it," Sarah said. "Sarah." "No." Velshara started, but Sarah was already moving. She grabbed a portable containment unit from her equipment pack and approached the stasis field. Her fingers flew across her scanner, analyzing the field's frequency and structure. "Don't take it," Velshara pleaded, her voice breaking again. "Please." Sarah looked at the red canyons of Kepler 442b, stretched endlessly in every direction as Sarah ran through the narrow passages between ancient stone walls. The containment unit felt heavy in her backpack, but she did not slow down. Behind her, she could hear the distinctive whine of Concordat security skimmers approaching the dig site. They would realize she had taken the resonance core within minutes, and then the real chase would begin. Sarah's communicator buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, more insistently. Finally, she pulled it out, still running, and saw Velshara's identification code on the screen. Against her better judgment, she answered. "You need to stop, Sarah," Velshara's voice came through, slightly distorted by the interference from the canyon walls. "The Concordat is declaring this a security emergency. They have authorization to use force if necessary." "I'm not going back," Sarah panted, leaping over a fallen boulder. "Not until I've had a chance to study this properly." "Then you are a fool," Velshara said, but there was something strange in her tone. "Not anger, exactly. Something else." "Probably," Sarah agreed. "Where are you?" There was a pause. "I am following you." Sarah stopped so suddenly she almost fell. She spun around and saw a figure moving through the canyon behind her, forearms pumping in a steady rhythm as Velshara ran. The Takari woman was surprisingly fast when she needed to be. "What are you doing?" Sarah called out. "I am not certain," Velshara admitted, catching up to the human. Her colors were a confused mixture of blue, green, and orange. "The logical choice would be to report your position to the Concordat. That is what my training tells me to do. That is what 500 years of Takari wisdom demands. But," Sarah prompted, "but you are carrying an extremely dangerous device through hostile terrain with no backup and insufficient knowledge of the planet's geography," Velshara said. "If you accidentally trigger that device, you will not just kill yourself. You will kill everyone on this planet and possibly destabilize the entire system. So I am coming with you, not to help you study it, to make sure you do not accidentally destroy us all." Sarah grinned. "I'll take it." They ran together through the canyons, and Sarah had to admit she was grateful for the company. Velshara's compound eyes could see in spectrum ranges humans could not, making her invaluable for navigating the treacherous terrain. More than once, Velshara spotted loose rocks or hidden crevasses that Sarah would have missed. "Where are we going?" Velshara asked after they had put several kilometers between themselves and the dig site. There's an old survey station about 15 kilometers north, Sarah explained between breaths. It was abandoned 3 years ago when the automated systems failed. No one has bothered to repair it because this region was supposed to be archaeologically barren. It will give us shelter and, more importantly, it has a laboratory with some basic analysis equipment. You planned this, Velshara accused. I planned for the possibility that I might need to study something without concordat interference, Sarah corrected. I'm an archaeologist working on precursor sites. It seemed prudent to have a backup location. They heard the skimmers before they saw them. 3 security vehicles appeared over the canyon rim, their sensors sweeping the landscape. Sarah and Velshara pressed themselves against the canyon wall, trying to blend with the redstone. The skimmers passed overhead, moving fast, clearly searching in a grid pattern. They will find us eventually, Velshara warned. Their sensors are very sophisticated. Then we need to move faster, Sarah said. The next hour was exhausting. They ran, climbed, and crawled through the canyon system, always staying one step ahead of the security forces. Sarah's human endurance surprised Velshara. The Takari had always thought of humans as physically weak compared to many galactic species, but Sarah kept pushing forward even when her muscles screamed and her lungs burned. How do you do it? Velshara asked during a brief rest in a sheltered alcove. How do you keep going when your body is clearly telling you to stop? Sarah took a long drink from her water supply. Humans are persistence hunters. Back on Earth, before we developed technology, our ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest or strongest species, but we are very, very good at not giving up. That explains much about human behavior. Velshara observed dryly. They pressed on. The sun was setting when they finally reached the abandoned survey station. It was a small compound built into the side of a mesa, its walls weathered by years of wind and dust. Sarah used her emergency override codes to open the door, and they slipped inside, just as another security skimmer passed overhead. The station's interior was dark and musty from disuse. Sarah activated the emergency power, and lights flickered on throughout the building. The laboratory was exactly where she remembered it, a small room filled with dust-covered equipment that had not been used in years. Will any of this work? Velshara asked, looking at the ancient scanners and analysis tools. Only one way to find out, Sarah said, setting down her backpack carefully. She removed the containment unit and placed it on the central workbench. The resonance core was still inside, its patterns of light visible through the transparent containment walls. Velshara kept her distance. But Sarah noticed her colleague's compound eyes were fixed on the device. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. Curiosity. The same curiosity that had made Velshara a scientist in the first place. Buried under layers of trauma but not entirely gone. Sarah connected the containment unit to the station's analysis equipment. Most of the scanners refused to work, their systems too degraded by time and neglect. But the basic spectrometer still functioned, and the gravitational sensor array came online after some coaxing. Look at this, Sarah said, studying the readings on her screen. The energy signature is incredibly stable. The fluctuations are less than 0.01%. This thing has been running for 12,000 years without any degradation. Kelmore said the same thing, Velshara reminded her quietly. He said the device was stable. He was wrong. Maybe he was wrong about what the device did, Sarah suggested. Not about its stability. She pulled up her personal notes, files she had compiled over years of studying precursor technology. The precursors had been masters of gravitational manipulation, but they had also been builders, creators, artists. Every artifact that had been successfully analyzed showed incredible sophistication and purpose. What if this is not a weapon? Sarah thought aloud. What if we have been misunderstanding its purpose all along? It killed 3 billion of my people, Valshara said. How is that not a weapon? A hammer can kill someone, Sarah countered. That does not make it a weapon. It makes it a tool that was misused or malfunctioned. She pulled up schematics she had made of the device from her earlier scans. The internal structure was fascinating. Layers of crystalline matrices arranged in patterns that seemed almost organic. Energy flowed through channels that curved in impossible ways, defying conventional physics. It's beautiful, Sarah whispered. It is dangerous, Valshara corrected. But she had moved closer to look at the schematics. What are those patterns? I think they are control systems, Sarah said. Look here and here. These are not random. They are deliberate, structured. It is like a computer, but infinitely more complex. Valshara's 4 hands moved in the air, tracing the patterns on the screen. Sarah recognized the gesture. It was what Takari did when they were processing complex information, using physical movement to help their minds work through problems. If these are control systems, Valshara said slowly, then what are they controlling? That is what we need to figure out, Sarah said. They worked through the night, analyzing every aspect of the resonance core that their limited equipment could measure. Sarah's training as an archaeologist combined with Valshara's deep knowledge of physics and engineering. Together, they began to build a picture of what the device actually did. It does not create gravitational fields, Valshara said around midnight, staring at a complex equation she had worked out on a digital notepad. It folds them. What do you mean? Sarah asked, looking up from her own analysis. Gravity is not just a force. It is a curvature of space itself, Valshara explained. This device does not generate more gravity. It creates controlled folds in the gravitational field, like folding a piece of paper. The effect is the same, increased gravitational pull, but the mechanism is completely different. Sarah felt excitement building in her chest. If it folds space, then the disaster on my world was not the device working as intended. Valshara interrupted, her colors shifting to bright orange with realization. It was the device working with improper parameters. Kelmora must have activated it without understanding the proper input values. Instead of creating a controlled fold, it created a cascade effect. A tool, not a weapon, Sarah said. I knew it. But Valshara held up one hand for caution. That does not mean it is safe, Sarah. A tool used incorrectly is just as dangerous as a weapon. More so, because the user does not expect the danger. Then we figure out the correct way to use it, Sarah said simply. You want to activate it, Valshara said. And now there was real fear in her voice again. Here. The resonance core pulsed with light, and for a terrible moment, Valshara was certain she was about to die. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far away as possible before the gravitational collapse began. Her mind flashed with memories of the scar, of 3 billion lives compressed into oblivion. Her 4 hands clenched into fists, her body frozen between the urge to flee and the strange trust she had placed in the human beside her. But the collapse did not come. Instead, something beautiful happened. The space above the resonance core began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot stone. But these waves moved in impossible directions. Up became sideways. Forward curved back on itself. Reality was folding, just as Valshara had theorized, but it was controlled, precise, and completely stable. Sarah's scanner was going wild with readings, and her face showed pure wonder. It's creating a gravitational lens, she breathed. Look at this, Valshara. It's not destroying space. It's reshaping it. The shimmer expanded slowly, forming a sphere about 2 meters across that hung in the air above the containment unit. Through the sphere, Velshara could see the far wall of the laboratory, but it looked distorted, as if she was looking through water. Objects on the other side appeared closer than they actually were, compressed by the fold in space itself. "The energy output is minimal," Sarah said, reading her scanner. "It's not pulling power from the environment. It's using the structure of space itself to create the effect. This is incredible." This is the laboratory door exploded inward. Commander Thaxil burst through, followed by 6 security officers in full armor. The commander was a Korthok, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol and their impressive physical presence. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scales that looked like armor, even without his protective suit. "Shut it down immediately," Thaxil roared, his weapon trained on Sarah. "You are endangering this entire planet." "Wait," Sarah said, keeping her hands visible but not moving toward the device. "Just wait. Look at what it's doing. It's stable. It's not a weapon. All precursor gravitational devices are classified as weapons," Thaxil stated. "Concordat law is clear. The device must be destroyed. Your law is based on fear, not facts," Sarah argued. "Look at the readings. This device is not dangerous when used correctly. The disasters were caused by improper activation, not by the device's intended function." "You do not have the authority to make that determination," Thaxil said. His weapon did not waver. "Power down the device and surrender it, or we will use force." Velshara stepped forward, placing herself between Sarah and the security forces. It was insane. It went against every bit of techery training she had ever received. But she did it anyway. "Commander," Velshara said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her body. "I am Velshara of the Takari Science Academy. I am a survivor of the scar. I have every reason to fear this device more than anyone in this room. And I am telling you that Dr. Chun is right. We need to study this, not destroy it." Thaxil's eyes widened slightly. The Takari were known throughout the galaxy for their caution regarding precursor technology. For one of them to defend studying such a device was almost unthinkable. "You are a survivor of the scar?" Thaxil asked, his weapon lowering slightly. "I lost my entire family in the collapse," Velshara said. "I lost my friends, my teachers, my home. For 500 years, I have lived with that loss. I know what these devices can do when they go wrong. But I am beginning to understand that we made them go wrong through ignorance. The only thing more dangerous than studying this device is not studying it. The Concordat regulations," Thaxil began, "are based on incomplete information," Velshara interrupted. "Look at what the device is actually doing, Commander. Not what you fear it might do. What it is doing right now." Thaxil looked at the gravitational lens floating in the air. His security officers had their weapons ready, but they too seemed uncertain. They had expected to find a dangerous situation, a rogue archaeologist playing with forces she did not understand. What they found was something else entirely. "What is that?" Thaxil asked, gesturing at the shimmering sphere. "It's a controlled gravitational fold," Sarah explained, speaking quickly. "The device is creating a stable distortion in space-time. Do you understand what this means? If we could replicate this effect, we could revolutionize space travel. Ships could fold space instead of pushing through it. Journey times could be cut in half, maybe more. This is not a weapon. It's a tool for exploration. The device on my homeworld created a gravitational collapse that killed billions," Thaxil countered. "How is this different?" "Because we understand the parameters now," Velshara said. "The collapse happened because the device was activated with the wrong input values. It tried to create a fold with insufficient spatial boundaries, and the effect cascaded out of control. This time, Dr. Chun used the correct parameters. The fold is contained, stable, and completely predictable. You cannot know that for certain, Thaxel argued. Nothing is certain, Sarah admitted. But science is about taking calculated risks to expand knowledge. Yes, this device is powerful. Yes, it could be dangerous if misused. But so can fusion reactors, antimatter engines, and quantum computers. We use all of those technologies safely because we studied them, understood them, and learned to control them. One of the security officers, a Yelani with crystalline skin, spoke up hesitantly. Commander, the readings are stable. If the device was going to cause a collapse, it would have happened already. The fold has been active for 3 minutes now, with zero fluctuation in output. Thaxel looked torn. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders and protocols. But he was also intelligent enough to recognize when reality did not match expectations. The device was not behaving like a weapon. It was behaving exactly like Sarah and Velshara claimed. A tool with a specific function. If I allow you to continue studying this device, Thaxel said slowly, and something goes wrong, I will be held responsible. My career, possibly my freedom, would be forfeit. If you destroy this device without understanding it, Sarah countered, you guarantee that the next time someone finds a resonance core, they will activate it in complete ignorance. The disasters will continue. The deaths will continue. This is our chance to break that cycle. Velshara added her voice to Sarah's. Commander, I understand your position. You are following orders designed to protect people from dangers they do not understand. But sometimes the rules need to be challenged. Sometimes caution becomes cowardice. My people learned that lesson too well. We became so afraid of making mistakes that we stopped trying to move forward. The laboratory was silent except for the soft hum of the resonance core. The gravitational lens continued its slow rotation. Stable and beautiful, a window into what the precursors had truly been capable of. Thaxel made his decision. I am ordering a security perimeter around this facility. No one enters or leaves without my permission. You have 72 hours to study the device and prove that it can be safely controlled. If at any point the readings become unstable, or if I determine there is a risk to planetary safety, I will destroy the device immediately. Is that understood? Sarah's face lit up with relief and gratitude. Understood, Commander. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Thaxel warned. If this goes wrong, history will remember me as the fool who allowed it to happen. Make sure I am remembered differently. The security forces withdrew, though they maintained positions around the building. Thaxel remained, setting up monitoring equipment to track the device's output. If there was even a hint of instability, he would act. Sarah and Velshara returned to their work with renewed energy. Now that they had official permission, they could access better equipment from the Concordat's own science division. More importantly, they could bring in other experts to help analyze the data. Over the next 2 days, the small laboratory became a hub of intense scientific activity. Researchers from a dozen different species arrived to study the resonance core. The initial skepticism gave way to excitement as the data confirmed what Sarah and Velshara had discovered. The device was not a weapon. It was a space folding engine, a technology that could change the fundamental nature of interstellar travel. Velshara found herself working alongside scientists she had known for decades, explaining her theories about gravitational folding and proper device parameters. She watched their fear transform into curiosity, saw them reach the same conclusion she had reached. The precursors had not been building weapons of mass destruction. They had been building tools for exploration, for reaching across the vast distances of space in ways that seemed like magic. You were right, Velshara told Sarah during a brief break on the second day, about taking risks for knowledge, about not letting fear control our actions. I have spent 500 years being afraid, and it accomplished nothing except holding me back. Sarah smiled, but it was a gentle smile, not triumphant. Your caution is not weakness, Velshara. It comes from real trauma, real loss. The galaxy needs people like you to remind people like me to be careful. We just need to find the balance between caution and courage. Perhaps humans and Takari can help each other find that balance, Velshara suggested. I would like that, Sarah agreed. On the third day, as the 72-hour deadline approached, Sarah and Velshara gave the 6 months had passed since the incident on Kepler 442b, and the Galactic Council chamber on Centris Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from 247 species filled the massive amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of debate that the translation systems struggled to process. At the center of it all, standing before the council's judgment seats, were Dr. Sarah Chen and Velshara of Tekar. The hearings had been going on for 3 days now. Sarah and Velshara had testified about their discoveries, presented their data, and defended their actions before countless committees and subcouncils. Today was the final session, where the council would deliver its verdict and, more importantly, where Sarah and Velshara would present their complete findings on the resonance. Core Technology. High Counselor Morstel, an ancient Valorian whose species had been part of the Concordat since its founding, called the chamber to order. His voice carried weight earned over 3 centuries of service. We have heard the arguments for punishment. We have heard the arguments for leniency. Now, we will hear what Dr. Chen and Velshara have learned from their study of the precursor device. The council will then make its determination. Sarah stepped forward, her hands steady despite the thousands of eyes watching her. Behind her, a holographic display activated, showing detailed schematics of the resonance core. Honored counselors, Sarah began, her voice clear and confident. 6 months ago, I violated Concordat security protocols because I believed that destroying knowledge out of fear was a greater crime than any breach of regulations. I stand by that belief. Today, I will show you that my actions, while unauthorized, have given the galaxy a gift that will change everything we know about space travel, planetary engineering, and scientific possibility. The hologram shifted, showing the gravitational fold that the resonance core had created in the laboratory. This device does not generate destructive gravitational fields. It creates controlled folds in the fabric of spacetime itself. The disasters attributed to these devices were the result of improper activation, not the device's intended function. A Kralthian counselor raised a massive stone hand. You claim the device is safe, yet it killed 3 billion Takari. How do you explain this contradiction? Velshara stepped forward to answer. Counselor, I am one of the survivors of that disaster. I lost everything I loved in the scar. For 500 years, I believed these devices were weapons of mass destruction that should be destroyed on sight. I was wrong. The chamber fell silent. The Takari were known for their unwavering positions on precursor technology. To hear one of their own, especially a survivor, say they had been wrong was shocking. The disaster on my homeworld occurred because we did not understand what we were activating, Velshara continued. The scientist who triggered the collapse, Kalmora, was brilliant and careful, but he was working with incomplete information. He activated the device with parameters designed for atmospheric manipulation in a gravity well 5 times stronger than the actual local conditions. The device tried to create a fold appropriate for those parameters, and when reality did not match expectations, the effect cascaded out of control. The hologram changed, showing side-by-side comparisons of proper and improper activation sequences. When activated correctly, Velshara explained, the resonance core creates a stable gravitational lens that can be used for faster-than-light travel. A ship positioned at the focal point of the lens can effectively fold space, allowing it to traverse distances in a fraction of the time conventional drives require. "How much faster?" asked the Yelani counselor, her crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. "Initial calculations suggest a 50% reduction in travel time between systems," Sarah answered. "Possibly more with further refinement. A journey that currently takes 6 months could be completed in 3. The chamber erupted into discussion. Trade routes could be transformed. Remote colonies could be made accessible. The entire structure of galactic civilization could be reshaped by such technology. "And you can prove this is safe?" High Counselor Morstel asked, his voice cutting through the noise. "We can," Sarah confirmed. "Over the past 6 months, the Concordat Research Facility has conducted 127 test activations of the resonance core. Every single activation was successful and stable. We have developed comprehensive protocols for safe operation, training programs for technicians, and fail-safe systems to prevent the kind of cascade effect that destroyed the southern continent of Tekar." Another hologram appeared, showing test results, safety protocols, and detailed operational manuals. Sarah and Velshara had been thorough, anticipating every question and concern the council might raise. A Takari counselor, Elder Shenver, stood slowly. His age was evident in the faded patterns on his chitin, in the deliberate way he moved. "Velshara of Tekar," he said formally, "you speak for a new path forward, abandoning the wisdom our people have held for 5 centuries. Do you truly believe we should embrace these devices after what they cost us?" Velshara met the elder's gaze steadily. "Elder Shenver, I believe we should honor what we lost by ensuring it never happens again. We honored the dead by learning to fear. I propose we honor them better by learning to understand. Every year, new precursor ruins are discovered. Every year, there is a chance someone will find another resonance core and activate it without knowledge. Our fear does not make these devices disappear. It only ensures that the next disaster will happen in ignorance, just like the first one." "And you trust humans to guide us in this?" Shenver asked, and there was weight in the question beyond its simple words. "I trust that humans see possibilities where we see dangers," Velshara replied. "I trust that Takari see dangers where humans see only possibilities. Together, we can find the balance. Humans like Dr. Chun push forward. Takari like myself remind them to be careful. Neither approach alone is sufficient. But together, we can accomplish what neither species could alone." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for her colleague's words. Over the past 6 months, their partnership had deepened into genuine friendship. They had spent countless hours in laboratories and research facilities, combining human intuition with Takari, caution to create something neither could have achieved alone. High Counselor Morstel conferred quietly with the other senior counselors. Finally, he spoke. "The council has reached its determination. Dr. Sarah Chun, you are found guilty of violating Concordat security protocols. You are fined 100,000 credits and placed on research probation for 1 standard year." Sarah nodded, accepting the punishment. It was lighter than she had feared. "Velshara of Tekar," Morstel continued, "you are found guilty of aiding in said violation. However, given your expertise and the valuable insights you provided, your fine is reduced to 50,000 credits, and you are placed on probation for 6 months. Velshara inclined her head in acknowledgement. "However," Morstel said, and his tone shifted to something that might have been approval, "the Council also recognizes that your actions, while unauthorized, have provided the Concordat with technology of immense value. Therefore, you are both appointed to head the new Precursor Technology Research Initiative, a joint program designed to study and safely utilize precursor devices. You will work with teams from every member species to develop protocols and training programs." Sarah and Velshara exchanged glances. It was not just a pardon. It was a commission, an official recognition that their approach had merit. But Moore's tale was not finished. Furthermore, the Concordat hereby reclassifies precursor gravitational manipulation devices from weapons requiring immediate destruction to advanced technology requiring special licensing and training. The prohibition on studying these devices is lifted. The galaxy will move forward with knowledge instead of fear. The chamber exploded into debate. Some counselors cheered, seeing the potential for advancement. Others protested, warning that the change was too radical, too dangerous. The Takari delegation was split, with younger members supporting the change while elders remained skeptical. Through it all, Sarah and Velshara stood together, knowing that they had accomplished something significant. Not just for themselves, but for the entire galaxy. The session continued for hours as the council worked through the details of implementation. Safety regulations, licensing requirements, research budgets, and a dozen other practical matters needed to be addressed. Sarah and Velshara answered questions, provided input, and watched as their vision slowly became official policy. When the session finally ended, they walked out of the council chamber to find a crowd waiting. Reporters from across the galaxy wanted statements. Scientists wanted to discuss research possibilities. Politicians wanted to understand the implications for their home systems. But one figure stood apart from the crowd. Commander Thagzil, the security officer who had nearly destroyed the resonance core, approached them with measured steps. Dr. Chun, Valshara, he said formally, I wanted to tell you that I submitted a report to my superiors. I recommended both of you for commendations for your work under pressure and your dedication to scientific truth. I was overruled on the Commandati.